Welcome everybody to the live coaching session on Master Builder webinar series. Today we're going to talk about mastering layout grids. Okay, so we're going to get started today. You have your live coaches. I'm John D'Arienzo. We also have Anthony Trani and Colleen Sweeney. Anthony will be on the keyboards and Colleen will be looking at the screen to see if any of you have questions. So if you have questions, type them out in the webinar panel, and Colleen will interrupt me and basically let me know so I can help you out. All righty. So the first thing we're going to start out with today is we're going to place a grid, a layout grid, into our form. And you'll notice when it starts out, it defaults to the captions being on the top and two columns. So Anthony's going to go ahead and just drag in very simply two text boxes. He's going to call one first name and one last name. And now we're going to go ahead and just preview that. And you'll see that you have first name and last name, and they're next to each other. If Anthony closes this now and just clicks on a different grid type, so if he clicks on the side by side and he previews this, you'll see that that changes to first name, last name. If he closes it again and he clicks on the no captions and re-previews that, you'll see that you're basically just going to get the two text boxes where you would type that in. Now, one of the interesting things here, Anthony, go into those text boxes and type in gray caption text. And now if you go ahead and preview that, you can actually have those names in there. And if you start typing, you'll see that those names go away and that information can appear for you. So just, right there, you saw you could have your captions on top, captions on the side, no captions, or actually captions right in the text boxes. So just giving you some idea of the different ways that you can lay out forms to take advantage of more real estate, let's say in a tablet or some of the new higher resolution smartphones where just a simple one column form is really going to look silly if every field was just kind of stretched out across the whole screen. Now you can take advantage of that screen real estate. The thing that you need to know is when you see two columns in the grid, click on the grid again, Anthony, and you see two columns there, basically what's going to happen is Anthony has first name and last name there. If he was to add another two fields, let's say phone number and email address, you would see that it's going to start to wrap. So after two columns, it's going to start to add those things underneath. So when he turns around and now previews that, you'll see that it just keeps repeating now. After every two columns, it starts putting that data over and over. So you can have a simple two-column layout grid, and you can put 20 pieces of information there, and it'll just automatically wrap on every two columns. The other thing that's important to know, Anthony, if you close this, is if you go to screen size smaller than, you have a couple of options here. So let's say you had 20 columns or in your grid. You have the option of expanding. So you can say if the screen size is smaller than 5 inches, then let the screen expand to 200%, right? And what that would do is it would keep all the screen sizes, but it would let you pan right and left if it was on a small device. The other option you have is stacking. So let's say you had those four fields, first name, last name, phone number, and email address. If you picked, if the screen is smaller than 5 inches stack, it will automatically put them back as one column question. So first name would come first, and underneath it would be last name, phone number, and email address. What that does is that makes it possible to take advantage of the real estate for a tablet where it would be easy to put things side by side and take up that real estate. But if somebody with a small device were to pick that up, it could automatically reverse back to a one column form. Very powerful. Okay, the next thing we're going to show you is, Anthony, put another grid in. And we're going to make this a 3-column grid and put in city, state, and zip code. And zip code. Yep. So the couple of things that we're going to show you here is Anthony can go into this grid now, and it's a 3-column grid. If he hits adjust column width, what we're going to do is we're going to give city 50 and state 20 and zip code 30. And what we're going to do then is we're going to go to this grid and we're going to say remove space above. And we're going to go to the grid above it and say remove space below. And what this is going to do, and when Anthony previews this now, is it's going to give you a compound grid. So it gives you the ability to have multiple columns and also gives you the ability to alter how your columns appear. How much of the proportion of the screen is given to each field in your screen. So the whole remove above and below, you can do that too if you wanted to put, let's say, an address line. Anthony, put an address line just between those two grids. It's just a text box. And just call it address. And if you take out above and below on that and preview it, you'll see that you can start to build your compound structure. So you have a 2-column grid with a 1-column text box with a 3-column grid underneath it. So you could literally lay out your screen using layout grids any way that you'd like. Okay, the other thing that we should let you know too is, let's just say you have a 20 columns in your grid. We're not going to do this because it just takes time, but you can use the vertical captions. So instead of the captions going across, they can go up. So, let's say you had columns that were only going to have 2-digit numbers in them, but the label was like number of hours and the next label was miles traveled. Instead of those rows having to be, or those columns having to be very wide because the labels are wide and they only really need 2 digits in them, you can use vertical captions and make, those captions go upward, and you can fit a lot more columns into your grid that way. All righty. So the next thing that we're going to show you is that basically you can change the appearance of the standalone widgets using layout grids. So Anthony, kind of click new here. Just let's start over new and put a signature widget in. And then put a layout grid and put a signature widget in. And what you want to do here is make it 1 column in that grid, just for now. And go ahead and click on it.
Click on preview. Caption on the top?
Yeah, click on preview. So what you notice here is when you put the signature just as a single widget, it's a big block. It gives you a large area to sign, and it's got the sign button on it. When you put it in a layout grid, because it's trying to fit within a cell and a caption, it gives you the pen icon, and click on it either way, it's still going to open up the center section. Hit it. You can click on it. You'll see that you can still sign it, and go ahead and just save that. So one of the things you need to know is you can change the appearance of how your widgets appear in the form based on placing them in the layout grid. So it can be very powerful to do that. Another thing that I want to show you is there's some cool things that you can do with layout grids. Like Anthony, put a layout grid up and put a select multiple in it. And in that select multiple, put an answer of show pictures. And then make the grid type a no caption grid. And then in the answer that you just put in the select multiple, make sure that you go to custom and say no remove border around the answer, and make sure turn off selection outline is clicked. Now put a picture in, an image control underneath it. Right, and is it there?
Yeah, I missed it.
Yep, go ahead, put an image in. And basically just call it image and put relevance on that to basically say if untitled 5, because you didn't give it a data name, that's fine, is equal to show pictures, then it's going to appear. So now go ahead and preview this. So now it made it very easy to just put a little checkbox into your form, and you can click on it and say show picture. So not everything has to look like it's a caption and an area underneath it to click on it. You can really start to format how your screen looks using the no caption option in the grid control. So one of the other things that we're going to show you now is Anthony is going to bring in a invoice, and we're going to show you how you can line things up. So bring an invoice in and go ahead and just preview it so they see what's there. And you'll see now if Anthony picks a part, it'll pick a part, it'll put a price, and it'll put a quantity. So what if we wanted to total the total column? Anthony, go ahead and just put a calculation in. Don't put it in a grid yet. Just drop a calculation in. Call it grand total. Give it 2 decimals, a currency symbol. Yep, equal to price times quantity.
With the sum of the total here.
I'm sorry. Yep. So you're going to equal the sum. You're going to sum the total from the table above. So what's going to happen here is when you do that, it's great. Your grand total's there. Everything's, it's left justified. But we'd really like to make that sort of look like it lines up directly underneath the total column. So go ahead and close this. Bring in a layout grid. Drag the grand total into it. Create the layout grid to be a no caption grid. Let's leave it as 2 columns. Put a label in front of that and call that label grand total. Go ahead and right justify that and open up the custom and basically do shaded headings and just do the white as the background. And don't click on border around the heading. And now we're going to change the layout grid adjust column size. And we're going to change that to, if you remember, we did that invoice is set up as 40%, 20, 20, and 20. So we're going to set up basically 80%, 20% here. Now go ahead and preview that, and you're going to see that that's underneath it. Now 2 more things. Anthony, do the remove space above and the remove space below, and then justify your answer on the right. And now when we go ahead and preview this, you'll see that that's nicely fit right underneath your grand total. And you now see as you're going, it looks beautiful. And you can do that same thing. You could add a line for miscellaneous, a line for shipping. You can do a subtotal line and a grand total line. It becomes very easy to make it look like a beautiful layout in your screen. One of the other things that we want to show you is you can basically do a very sophisticated sort of signature with an auto stamp. So Anthony, do a new. And this is the last thing we're going to show you other than a little discussion on how grids are referenceable. But go ahead and pick a no caption grid type. Bring in a signature field. Bring in a label. And bring in a date control. Change the date control to just date type. Okay. And now go back to the layout grid and let's set this up as, let's say, 50, 20, 30. Set the label up and make that equal date.
Make this white first.
Make it white. That's fine. Right? No border around the answer. And make that equal date. Very good. And then what we're going to do is let's preview it. You
want to auto stamp?
Yeah, we could set up the auto stamp. Set up the auto stamp. So what we're going to do is set it up so that as soon as they sign, it's going to automatically set the date. So the signature itself will automatically set the date. We're just going to see if the format looks nice. So what we want to do here is you want to go back in. You must have done something on the label there. Go into your date, and you're going to pick set. Get rid of the today button. So remove today button. And you're going to go into custom and you're going to say remove answer around. And you're going to go into read only and make it read only because we don't want them to change it. And then in the label, you got to put a caption date and you got to right justify it. All right, let's preview that now. Just got 2 things named date, no problem. That's why this is a live session. And if we go ahead now and preview it, you now have a structure that allows somebody to sign. They go ahead and sign, and it automatically puts the date in for you. They can't change it. And just a very powerful way to change the way your forms look and the way your forms behave. So the last thing that I want to talk about on this live coaching session is just one of the things you need to know is tables are very powerful controls, but when you build a table, none of the fields in the table are referenceable individually. So if you needed to reference, let's say, the 3rd row in a table in column 1, just that item, you can't do it. And in grids, when you go ahead and do a no caption grid, you're effectively getting the equivalent of, let's say, a spreadsheet control. So when you build your no caption grid, every one of those cells gets a unique do forms control in it, and every one of those controls is referenceable. So if you have a situation where you need to create a table but you need to be able to reference the third row, first column of that table. You build it in a no caption grid, and then every cell is referenceable. So with that said, Colleen, are there any questions being asked by the audience here? I know we covered that pretty much in depth there.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Okay. So once again, feel free. You can contact me, John D'Arienzo, or Anthony Trani, or Colleen Sweeney if you have any additional questions. This will also be posted up on our YouTube channel, so feel free to look at that anytime you'd like. And once again, thank you for attending.